Welcome to the GNAR podcast. Here we are again. Ashley's here, and we're sitting in a hotel room on this crazy cross-country journey, and we are getting our podcast ready to come out. And this particular one was recorded high up in the North Fork of Big Pine Creek wilderness. Not quite at the top. I think it was like above the fourth lake, but below the summit lake. And the audio quality on this one is a little bit better than the last week's. However, it still has a couple times where it got a little loud, and we also encountered some crazy weather while we were filming and recording this. And so we had to pause and then restart it. But the content's great. This particular episode, we discuss our trip to Nepal, which was with Adrian Gilani, one of our good friends.
Yeah, so this is actually part 2 of a part 4 series. It took 4 episodes to get everything out that we wanted to discuss with Adrian. So we hope you enjoy this episode. It's mostly all about Nepal and all the fun that we had on that trip.
Yeah, it's really great. And if you check out the YouTube video, you can see just the incredible scenery this was filmed at. And we got a lot of great video content in these lakes, and then basically scrambled down at the end and escaped because the smoke from all the wildfires in California was quickly approaching. And then after that, we took off further east and have a few more shows that we'll be releasing in the next couple of weeks from that. And as far as the business goes, we have some exciting updates coming out, and we're looking forward to sharing those here with everybody in a few weeks.
Awesome. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah, so we're on day 2 of our North Fork of Big Pine Creek. We are up near the 5th lake.
We're between the 4th lake and Summit Lake and 6th Lake right now.
Yeah.
Pretty stunning scenery behind us if you're watching the video. We are also capped at our 30-minute video recording again, so
we will be under 30 minutes today.
We'll be under 30 due to our video requirement. We hauled all this equipment. We left our camp set up down by the 2nd lake.
Yep.
And we hauled camera equipment up, all of the podcast equipment, and some just lunch food, which is a lot of weight.
Yeah, surprisingly, our backpacking gear must be pretty light because our packs are still pretty heavy.
They are. So even though we only went a couple miles today, it was still pretty hard. We're also at, 11,000 feet almost? So.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can tell you the exact.
What kind of watch is that again?
This is the Garmin Fenix 6X Pro.
Yes.
The iWatch.
So it's saying we're at just under 11,000 feet elevation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did about 1,000 feet ascending today.
Right.
And this is the Palisade Glacier behind us, actually, which we're going to do that tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sweet.
And we met somebody on the trail that was talking about the views up there, not even necessarily when you're at the glacier. There's supposed to be this meadow that you can go through, go up some more switchbacks, and you have this incredible view of all the lakes.
Yeah, we'll see how true that one is once I haul all this equipment up there, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
More to come later.
Yeah. So I think for the rest of the day, we're debating on heading back to the 2nd lake and swimming, depending on the weather.
Yeah, we're in between thunderstorms now, but this time of year, you just have a whole bunch of storms forming literally above our heads.
Mm-hmm. It was fun for lunch. We all kind of just laid down and watched the clouds, and they were all moving so fast.
Yes.
It was really pretty.
It was very cool.
Kind of trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about on this podcast, this specific one, was our trip to Nepal in November of 2018.
Yep.
Which this is the crew that went to Nepal to attempt to hike to base camp. But actually, no, we were not attempting to go to base camp. We were attempting to do the 3 Passes trek.
Yep.
Yes. So the 3 Passes trek included base camp, but then you were going to continue to do this big loop, go around Goikyo-ri, was it? A bunch of other lakes?
It's these 3 passes, each of which is like 17,000 feet or maybe even higher that you cross over.
Mm-hmm.
And you also hit base camp on the way, and then you just kind of do this big circuit, and you end up back at Namche Bazaar, which is kind of the starting point for this trail. So that was our original plan. We were following this guy's YouTube videos, and he did this circuit in a short amount of
It was
time.
like 13 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's give a background on this guy. So we were watching this YouTuber, and apparently he lives in Colorado and regularly does ultra marathons, and he's regularly in the 14,000 or the 14ers, the very tall mountains in Colorado. So he's acclimated. He's used to being in that. So it makes sense when he's going to go do this 3 Passes trek that he's going to do it fast.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I don't think really any of us, you had done Whitney, but none of us really had experience with altitude above 14,000 feet.
Oh, there goes the rain.
And it is raining, so this may get cut short if it starts to really rain.
We could totally pause and then resume.
We can, yeah. We
Yeah.
might
We'll
have
see.
to.
If it gets too bad, we'll pause it.
Right
Yeah.
now, it's okay. However,
Interesting.
podcast equipment is not meant to be rained on.
A lot of electrical equipment.
Yeah. There we go. That looks
Okay,
like
we'll see how it just put a case on top of it.
I know, it's really crazy. Oh, I hope that. Okay, that's scary. So yeah, so we had been watching this guy on YouTube, and so we had this idea, and we had limited time because we're all working full-time jobs, and so we were lucky to be able to get almost a month off of our jobs to be able to go to Nepal. But you have to remember, it takes a couple days just to get to Nepal, a couple days from there to get to the trailhead. So it's not a quick thing to be able to go and hike. You know, even if you have a month off, you're not necessarily going to be hiking for a month.
That's true.
And so realistically, we only had 14 days to accomplish what we were trying, or maybe it was less than, it may have been 13 days to accomplish what we were trying to do. And so.
And 13 days isn't uncommon to just go to base camp.
It's relatively uncommon. From the research we learned after the fact, most people are spending a couple weeks just to get to base camp.
That's what I'm saying. So it's
Yes.
not uncommon to go to base camp, and we were trying to do this whole loop in the amount of time that most people just take to go to base
I
camp.
think base camps are usually typically around 2 weeks is usually what the tour companies do. 14 days, 13, 14
And
days.
that's with a full guide and people carrying, like a porter that's carrying all of your gear.
And we
Yeah.
chose to do this completely self-supported.
Yes.
So we're all carrying our weight. Adrian, of course, being the photographer that he is, he brings all of his camera gear.
Yeah, I had 50 pounds worth of camera gear. I brought 3 lenses. Each of them are 2 pounds each. I brought my Nikon D750, and that was already another couple pounds. Oh, cool. The rain is a little weaker.
Yeah, it's not as bad right now.
And then I had a tripod, and then I brought filters. So, yeah, it was a ton of stuff. I just knew it was a lot of gear when we were waiting for our airplane ride on the little 15-seater plane to go to Lukla, and the baggage handlers are picking up the bag, and they're like, oh, like looking at me, and
They
I'm
were
like,
freaking
oh
out.
shit, this is not good.
And they're like, "Oh, you have a guide?" And we're like, "No, we're doing this all ourselves." Like, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so we went into it with high expectations that we were going to be able to blast through this hike because we just didn't really consider the elevation. Because
We hike a lot.
We hike a lot, and mileage. And I was training beforehand in terms of just getting my legs in shape, but mileage-wise, it's not that far to get to base camp or to even do this circuit. You know, it's not more than probably 40 miles to do the whole thing. So we're like, oh, we have 2 weeks to do that. Sure, that's going to be really easy.
No problem, right?
However, the altitude really was a factor. And so to kind of go back a little bit before we actually got to the hiking, we, landed in Kathmandu. So it takes 20 plus hours just to get there. We spent the night there, and then we took a little prop plane into Lukla, which is one of the most dangerous airports in the world.
Yes,
And
it's just under 10,000 feet.
It's crazy. And the like the runway is actually at an angle. It's on a slope on the side of a mountain, and so plane crashes occur every year at this place.
Yeah, so let's explain that airport and the runway. So it's on a slope, and let's just be clear why it's on a slope. It's because it's so short. It needs like every inch of runway it can possibly get. So in order to take off, it goes downhill, and then like if you were to not get enough speed or take off and go up, you would be crashing down this massive cliff.
Yeah, it's a 2,000-foot drop into a valley, and then you got like this giant mountain on the other end. And
Yeah.
I think the runway was only paved in the early 2000s before the villagers would come out and just stomp the gravel down every morning so the
Oh my
planes can
gosh.
land.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's the kind of airport we were dealing with there.
And the planes are very, very old.
Oh yeah, and you're watching them load the seats into the plane before you get in, so the seats aren't even like permanent or fully attached because sometimes they're loading cargo or gear into it instead of people.
Oh my
Shout out
gosh.
to Yeti Airlines.
They
Highly
got us
trained
there
pilots.
safely.
Highly trained pilots.
Seriously.
Some of the best.
So terrifying. And so, the airport experience to get out of Kathmandu is awful, as it is to leave Lukla. I mean, it's very chaotic. It's very third world country-esque. So even though your flight is, let's say, scheduled for 9 a.m., you're probably going to be getting on the plane around 4 in the afternoon. That's just the way that works. It's you have no idea. Your ticket doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of whenever they want you to end up on the plane.
Yeah.
And so eventually we get on the plane. We're all on the plane. We're heading towards Lukla. It's a terrifying flight. We enter the Sierras, and you're just bouncing up and down. The plane drops like 30 feet, and the pilots are just laughing like it's fun. And
The Himalayas, not the Sierras.
yeah, the Himalayas. Yeah, correction.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. So we eventually landed, and then we landed in Lukla, and then it's like an 8 or 9 mile hike to Namche Bazaar.
But do you know what's really cool about that flight is after doing that flight and feeling us at about a 45-degree angle, now when I'm on like massive aircrafts, the Boeings, I just figure it's nothing. I'm
It's
like,
nothing.
we've gone
Oh,
literally
shit.
45 degrees and we've been fine. So I can handle anything now.
How are we doing with the rain, folks? Should we pause and cover up the equipment?
We are getting a little rained on here. I think we should take a quick pause.
All
and,
right.
We'll be back after this commercial
Yes,
break.
exactly.
To follow Adrian Gilani Photography.
It's hailing a little bit or something.
Instagram handle at Adrian Gilani.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
And we are back. The rain has dissipated.
For the most part, I expect that there might be some more showers, so
It's definitely
we might
possible.
be Hulu style and have a couple commercial breaks.
A couple commercials.
Unless you
Yeah.
sign up for the premium
That's
edition.
Yeah.
Weather report in the Sierras, high Sierras. Yeah, this is the way it's like, though. It changes all the time. So now it's all sunny. So now we got shades on again.
Exactly.
It's crazy. So, we landed in Lukla, and we're starting our hike towards Namche.
Right. So the beginning part, it goes like 2,000 feet down. So you already started at around 10,000 feet. And now to get to Namche Bazaar, you got to go like 2,000 feet down into this valley, cross over those iconic, bridges that the yaks go over. And it's got the prayer flags and all that. And then you go up the other side. And then you got to do a bunch of switchbacks all the way up to Namche Bazaar.
And that
I
was
forgot
what,
the miles.
11 miles?
Something like that.
Yes.
I think it was 11.
And we were immediately, because we hit the ground running, our plane was delayed, so we didn't get started until, let's say, noon, and we already had to cover all these miles. And
Yeah.
then the time we started going, and we were immediately just, I guess, kind of appalled by how difficult it was.
Yeah, you sprained an ankle day one.
Yeah, within the first...
Yeah, broke a pole, snapped it
I
in half.
snapped a pole, sprained an ankle, and then we were already sucking wind, and it was really hard. We thought we were going to make it all the way to this village, and we were just not going to. Adrian was miles and miles behind us.
Miles. Well, I did not have a good backpack. I overloaded an ultralight backpack by like 30 pounds over the limit. So
Right,
that-
so it was rated for, what, having 20
like
pounds
20,
in it?
yeah, and I put like 55, I think, when they measured it at the airport. And they're
Yeah.
like, too heavy for a plane. I'm like, oh, what?
So anyway, we ended up stopping like maybe 3/4 of the way, halfway through this hike. So we already were starting off a day behind schedule.
Yeah.
And so the next day we got up, I got my ankle working well enough, and we limped our way into Namche Bazaar. And typically groups spend a couple of days there acclimating. I don't know what's the elevation in Namche. Is it 10,000 feet, something like that maybe?
I think it's above 10.
Is it 12? It's up there. And
Something
so
like that.
we were going to spend a couple of days there and just kind of acclimate. However, since we had spent a day at the other place, we just were, for whatever reason, and we're ignorant, we spent one night there.
Just one.
Yeah, we already stopped like 2 miles before Namche, maybe 2,000 feet underneath Namche, and there was a checkpoint that you were supposed to go by from the Nepali police or something, or their park system. You're supposed to pay for a pass to continue on.
Oh, yeah.
You guys never saw him, but
yeah.
I did.
So that was issues later. I kind of forgot all about
that comes up later.
That
Yeah.
does come back
foreshadowing
to bite
here.
us in the ass. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't get some permit or something we were supposed to get because I guess the guy was sleeping, or they don't stop you like they
Yeah.
would in America. You actually have to go out of your way to get this permit, and we had no idea.
Yeah, when I
Right.
went up to the hut, it looked like no one was there, but there was a dude sleeping on the floor, like behind the desk. And like I came up, he was like, "Oh," and he just like sprung up. He's like, "Oh, this many monies," and gave me a piece of paper, and I was good to go.
Yeah.
And there, we had already gotten another permit prior to that. So we had already gotten ones. We thought we had already had everything, but there was 2. You have to get multiple.
Yep.
Anyway, so we left Namche after doing one night there. I think we paid for an upgraded room with a hot shower, which was, when I say upgraded room, that's overstating what it is.
Yeah. Unless you know what it is.
Compared to that.
Yeah.
And we upgraded for heated blankets.
Heated
They did
beds.
have that in
heated bed,
Namche.
yeah.
So to put everyone who's listening more in the situation, the weather there, it was end of November, right? When we started?
Yes.
Or mid-November,
We
November
were there
15th, I
over
believe.
Thanksgiving. So yeah, it was the end of November.
Yeah, and it was getting down, what was it, below freezing at night for sure.
Very cold.
Did it
Very
ever
cold.
get down into the single digits?
When we got
I think
further
it got
up,
around 0.
it was around
Yeah.
0 when we were further up. But in Namche, it was probably in the 30s to like low 40s during the day, and then at night it was in the 20s to 10s.
Right.
Yeah.
But then the sun would beat down on you during the day, so it might have only been 40 degrees, but with the sun,
Yeah, you can get
you were
sunburned.
in a t-shirt
Mm-hmm.
and loading up on sunscreen because you could definitely get fried.
Very, very confusing weather. And so we were staying, we're doing this by ourselves. We have no guide, but there's plenty of maps, and then the trail is very well marked. It's very easy to do by yourself. And they have these tea houses and these tiny villages that are kind of sprinkled throughout the entire trail. And there's no roads here.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to get from these villages is by foot or by yak.
Like even all the supplies are all brought in. All
Every
water,
single thing.
food, it's all brought in by porters, and they just carry it all on their backs.
Or helicopters.
100 pounds.
We
So
did see a few
a couple of
those.
helicopters come in and bring supplies as well. So there's not really options for, getting on a bus or a car. You have to walk everywhere. And all of the supplies are very, I guess, even kind of expensive just because they are carried in.
Yep.
So we had a mapped out plan to hit all these villages and kind of, every day knock off 5 or 10 miles. And we didn't really build in acclimating time into our schedule because we really didn't have the time.
Right.
So typically, groups, and I really learned a lot of this after we had done this hike, but typically groups will spend 3 or 4 days at Namche Bazaar. They acclimate to that elevation. And then sometime during those 3 or 4 days, they go up 1,000 feet and then they come back down. Mm-hmm. And then, after those 3 or 4 days, they camp 2,000 feet higher and they stay there for a few days.
And then you're
Yeah.
doing these acclimation day hikes where you go up high and then you sleep lower.
But we did not do any of this.
No, we just powered through the whole thing. Just one night in Namche, and we're like, we're good to go.
Yeah, we were just acting like it's the Sierras. Why not?
Yeah, because the trail is deceiving. It looks pretty easy, but the altitude is what gets you, and it sneaks up on you. And I was
It's really
taking
bad.
pills.
So in Namche, Adrian shed some weight from his pack.
Oh, yeah. So I asked the lady at the front desk of the place we were staying at, and I'm like, hey, I need to drop off, like, it was like $5,000 worth of, like, camera gear, but it was like 10, 15 pounds maybe, but it made a difference. I was just trying to get my pack under 40.
Yeah.
So, like, I dropped off a bunch of stuff, a bunch of lenses and extra equipment, and the lady was like, yeah, I'll just keep it in my room. This is foreshadowing for later, because I have to retrieve that on the way back down. I didn't want to forget.
Exactly. So we kept going up. Adrian is falling behind quite a few ways, and we're getting ahead and we're waiting on him, and then we get ahead and we wait on him. So after Namche, we get to the first major village where we had planned on camping, and we go into, Ashley and I are together, and we go into like this coffee bakery to get some baked goods, and Adrian is way behind us. He's just really, really, really going. He's struggling.
I think
And
it's the Tingbouché monasteries where we're trying to reach.
that's right. And so we go into this bakery in this monastery, and we're waiting on Adrian. We're waiting on Adrian. We're waiting on Adrian. We're waiting on Adrian, and he never shows up. He never shows up. We're just sitting there waiting for hours. He never shows up. We don't have cell service. We don't know what happened. So we end up getting a hotel room, and we just don't know what happened to Adrian.
Yeah, we lost Adrian for a night at least.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what happened. And so I believe the next day we got a text or something, and we got Wi-Fi, and we found out Adrian, I guess, had gotten there several hours later, and he just passed us. We were in the bakery, and we just must have missed him.
Yeah.
And he ended up linking up with this other group.
Yeah, I was with some other group. It was like this French guy and this girl from Colorado that was going around the world doing stuff, and then someone from like Latvia or something. I was like, oh, this is a cool group, and they were like, yeah, come with us. But they were gonna go and climb some island peak. That's what it was.
Didn't they all meet on some hiking app?
Yeah, there's some kind of app, and they called it like the Tinder for hiking or something. But it's not a hookup thing.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be you can join other people and just like go hike as a group. It's kind of cool in case you're lonely.
So we weren't a very good group because we lost Adrian on
Yeah,
our,
you guys just like
third night.
chilling at the Einstein Bakery.
But we ended up catching him maybe, I think, the next night or the night after that. It might have been 2 nights.
Yeah, it was 2 nights.
It was 2 nights later. We finally regrouped with Adrian at this place, and he was like eating breakfast at 11, and we're like, hey, we got to go, man. And I could tell he was already on starting to feel
Yeah, we were
not great.
We were already at like 15,000 feet or something, and I was already like, oof, this is taking a toll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were trying to really take it easy and slow down. And maybe that would have been the right course of action.
It's supposed to be the right course of action. I think the next village is Dingbouché. That's where we're supposed to go.
That's right.
Just before the first pass.
It was, yes. And so we got to this place. The plan was to hike up to this one village and then stay there, and then the next day do the third pass or the first pass. And we made it up there. Ashley and I were there first.
17,000 feet.
We were waiting on Adrian for hours and hours. He eventually showed up, and we ended up making the call that we didn't think we could do the 3 passes.
Was this the place where the guy was so sweet and like let you guys take a nap?
That was
when we came back down.
Okay.
Yeah, this is on the way back, on the way up, and it was they had like oxygen for sale for like $40 for 5 minutes, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, already food was all vegetarian at that point because they couldn't ship meat in via helicopter or something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about what we were eating while we were there. So we went in knowing that we weren't going to be doing a lot of meat because we were afraid that the meat wouldn't have been stored properly and it could carry some kind of bacteria that would make us sick. So we weren't.
I still ate the meat.
Okay, so Mason and I weren't doing meat at all.
Mm-hmm.
We just knew that that wasn't a part of the plan, and we also knew eating like fresh vegetables or fruit that was washed in their water without being cooked. That was
It's
not a part
dangerous.
of the plan.
And meat's not a part of their diet, so a lot of it is just brought in just for Western people.
Yeah.
So we didn't really, from my experience with international travel, you just typically want to eat the food of the locals. A lot of times they try to prepare American food and like make pizza and stuff.
They're like,
but
here's hamburger.
Yeah.
You get it, and you're like,
it's
oh,
not a good
food
idea.
poisoning.
Just eat the food that they eat. And so their typical meals are dalbat, which is the lentil soup.
Yep.
And what are the
Momos.
Say it.
momos,
Oh, I hate those things now.
which are dumpling, basically. It's like they have them steamed and fried, and there's veggies in them.
And everywhere you go, they all taste different. So there isn't like a classic momo, I don't think. That
Every village has
Yeah,
a different,
probably every cook within every village has a different type of
has their
momo.
own recipe.
Yeah.
So that was what we were eating pretty much the entire time, every meal. And that and hot, what was the ginger lemon honey tea?
Oh, yeah. They said for altitude.
A
they'll give
Yes.
you
small
the-
pot of lemon ginger honey.
Yeah. We would drink that tea, which is actually really nice because it's such cold air and it's such thin air. You just want that, and it's so cold, so you just want that hot tea everywhere you go. And so we had that almost every place we stopped.
Right. And we were getting really good practice for COVID because everywhere we went, we had to cover our mouths with a buff because there was so much dust.
All the dust.
Yeah. So everybody in front of you was kicking up dust, or like when the ox came by on the trail, they were definitely kicking up dust. And yeah, so not only were we having to contend with this altitude and not having as much oxygen, we have this mask over our face in order to like keep all the dust out of our mouth, but it also prevented even more oxygen.
Exactly. So, Yeah, so we made it to Dengboche. Adrian got there a few hours later. We ended up spending the night there, and this is the point where we're probably around 17,000 feet. This is when I start having pretty severe headaches at night when we're sleeping. And I'm cold at night, my sleeping bag. Even though I have a liner and everything, I'm still cold, which maybe I was just getting sick. But so I'm having these headaches, so I'm taking a lot of ibuprofen, and I'm not sleeping well through the night.
Yeah, so not only is the altitude giving headaches to make you not sleep, it's cold. There's also a million dogs outside that just sound like coyotes. Do you guys remember that?
A lot of
Just
wild dogs.
hearing the
Strange
dogs
beings.
all
Stray
through the
dogs.
night.
Yeah, so that was all going on. So at that point, we decided to just go to base camp instead of doing these passes. And so we backtracked down to get back on the base camp trail.
But before we did that, we did the tiny little day hike up to 18,000 feet.
We did. Oh, we got
We got a little thunder. Yeah, up to 18,000 feet. And you can see the host just before Mount Everest. It was
that's
blocking
right.
Mount Everest the whole time. And then you get this entire glacier. The glacier was covering the
great.
entire valley.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. And that was a struggle fest for each of us.
Yeah, I didn't make it
I
up
was
very
probably
far
killing
that.
it.
That's what got me. Once I did that, and I was like, oh no, the altitude is really
It
getting
was
me.
really, really affecting
And I never
us.
recovered. Since I came down, everything was worse from there on out.
Yeah,
This is 5
that's
days
true.
into the trip now.
Something like that.
5-6
Really
days.
quickly, we shot up to 18,000 feet.
Yeah.
Really, really quickly.
And then really quickly, we tried to shoot our way back down.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so...
That was the next day when we came.
It was. So we shot back down. We get to this village. I think, is it Tangboche or Dingboche?
Timboshe. I think it's Timboshe.
Either one. We get back down there, and we're just there for like a lunch. And Adrian and I like book a little. We didn't even pay for it. We just walk up like, hey, can we stay in the room for a nap time? And this guy lets us into his little hotel. And Adrian and I just go in there and just lay down because we're both starting to feel pretty shitty at this
Big
point.
side effect of altitude is that drought, that lethargic tiredness
Awful.
feeling.
It
It was
just
hitting
felt-
us hard.
And so we just pass out. Ashley goes for a trail run up to 15,000 feet or something
We're
crazy.
laying there,
Yeah.
and we can see you outside the window just running up this giant ass mountain.
Apparently,
like,
She's-
okay,
doesn't have altitude issues.
you're like a robot,
Yeah, so crazy.
cyborg.
And so then we get through that, and then we decide, hey, like let's push to this next village. We can do it
On the route to base camp.
on the way to base camp. I forget the name of that town. Adrian, you probably know it
that
better
little
than me.
town that we stayed in. We were trying to go to. Oh no, what's the name of it? It's the last main village before base camp, but there's a tiny little village just before that main village.
Yes,
and it
I
was
can't
stuck in a
remember.
little valley. Can't remember the name of it.
I can't remember it either.
I don't have my
We should
Alexa
probably have
with
a
me
map
either.
with us. Regardless, you know, it's not Gorik Shep. That's like the base camp town. It's
Yeah.
the couple
It's the
before
one before that.
Yeah.
It's the one just before that.
And so we decide to push for that, and we make it there. And, you know, in fashion, Ashley and I are there first, and we're waiting on Adrian for
in fashion, I was dying.
for hours and hours and hours waiting on Adrian. Eventually, Adrian does show up, and
Is this Thanksgiving Day?
This
Yes,
is Thanksgiving Day.
Okay, so this is
2018.
Thanksgiving Day, and just to set the scene a little bit more, Mason and I, we get there, we kind of sit outside for a little bit, decide that it might be a while until Adrian shows up, so we go and we get dinner, and we're talking about how this is probably our favorite Thanksgiving that we've ever had. We're just really enjoying our time out there, feel so fortunate, and we had nothing but great things to say at this point.
Yes.
Complete opposite from me. From my perspective, it was like 2 miles and it took me forever to do. And I'm looking down at the valley on my left, and to my right is the way to go to Everest. I see La Hoste, and I can just see these massive 20,000 foot peaks and just helicopters constantly flying back and forth. Later on, I found out that in the afternoon, they say that the helicopters, when they're flying there, it's for rescues. But in the morning, it's the tourist ones. I don't know how true
Foreshadowing.
that is, but that's interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, it took me forever to get to that village.
Yeah,
Forever.
so we end up seeing Adrian finally coming around this corner
Yep.
and like, hallelujah, he's alive, he's here. But then in order to get to this village where Mason and I had already finished dinner, you have to come up this hill,
Yeah, you gotta go
essentially.
down into
you go
a
down
creek
into
and
a
then go
creek,
up.
cross this bridge, and then you go up.
I'm stuck in a bowl.
And we're just watching Adrian
Limping.
climb so slowly
And
out of
walking.
this ravine.
Walking 10 feet at a time,
Had no
stopping.
energy.
Break.
And
And then when he
yeah.
gets here, I've never really seen anyone with altitude sickness. I didn't really know what to imagine or to expect when it happened. But you see Adrian, he's in a completely different world, like not cognizant of what's happening. Like we talk about food, and I think they made some Wonder Bread toast for you that might have had some butter
I didn't
on
want
it.
to eat anything.
And I think you had 2 bites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
he couldn't eat, and he doesn't take pills normally, but we were giving him all sorts of ibuprofen, and
I was just taking whatever was
whatever
going to
he
be.
could take, and it wasn't good. So we felt really bad. I know he probably had a really rough night. It was these places we're staying in too. They don't have heat, so you're staying in these lodges,
Plywood boxes.
It's 0 degrees outside.
But they do. They have some kind of heat. A lot of times in the kitchen area, so not the kitchen, but the
the yak
dining room
stove.
area, they have the wood stoves that they obviously can't chop down wood for because we're in the Himalayas, so there's not a lot of trees.
There's no trees.
So what they do is they take yak dung, flatten it, and it's cold, so it'll all dry, and then they heat up the yak dung.
That's their fuel, is yak dung, which is great. They do have heat in the main dining area. However, there is no heat in your
Not in
room.
the
True.
rooms. And no running water.
There's no running water, so the bathroom situation is not great. So with all that, sleep is tough to come by.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not warm, or if you have mountain or altitude or AMS, right, acute mountain sickness, then sleep is definitely not great. And so we ended up sleeping there that night. Wake up the next morning, Adrian is done. It's over.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to stay there for at least a day and see if I get better before I continue on. And so then I told you guys just push on to base camp, and I'll try to catch up. If not, I'm going to try to go back down to a lower altitude and just walk back. Because when you have altitude sickness, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go down in elevation. But I was also stuck in this bowl, so I needed some energy before I can go back up and then go down.
And you were more than just, you were sick. So just walking down is a lot harder than
Yeah.
it seems. Just to walk. It seems
very
you just walk downhill. Well, it's a lot more than that, because when you're sick and you have that mountain sickness, you can barely move.
Mm-hmm.
You can barely walk.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. I think I had a cold, a cough. You get a cough, everything was bad.
It's not great.
So then from here, why don't you guys tell your perspective getting to base camp, and then I'll fill in on what exactly
What
happened.
you
with me.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to split the group up and go towards base camp. And we go up to the next village, and that's where Ashley and I are going to stay. And we get there, and then I start to go on a downward spiral.
Right. So you're sleeping even less at this point.
I hadn't been sleeping through a night probably in 3 nights by this point, but I would just wake up, take ibuprofen, and that would at least give me a few hours of sleep. But then when we were up there at this point, we're probably around 17,000 feet. And I had not been sleeping at all for a couple nights at this point. I've been dealing with these severe headaches during the day, during the night. Was definitely dealing with acute mountain sickness. However, I just am willing to just kill myself to keep going. And so we make the decision to stay at this place. The next morning we wake up, and I'm like, all right, I don't have I know that I'm about to be done. I know that I cannot make it for a few more days. So I'm like, all right, we have to just push right now to base camp and do an out and back.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day head down, because I can't stay up here for more than a few more days. And so we basically start heading towards base camp, and we decide to go to Kalapatar, which is a little bit higher.
Sinking the microphone.
We decided to go up to Kalapatar, which is 18,000 feet. So we basically run up that thing, see it.
Yeah, we get to the top. We drop off this rock that Adrian had given us.
Oh, yeah. There's this thing on Facebook where you get these painted rocks and you drop it off in somewhere else and you geotag it. It's like a geocache thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be funny because we found it doing Castle Peak Trail in the Sierras near Tahoe.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be funny if we update the coordinates being Everest Base Camp. So I gave it to you to put it there in case I didn't make it.
Which we
we did, yes.
Dropped that rock off, took a picture.
That rock went viral.
It was one of the hardest things. I will say that. Going up to the top of Kalapatar, 18,000 feet, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, just every step forward to get up, further up, it broke me. It was really difficult.
Yeah, and we didn't stay up there that long. We basically, I'd say maybe 10 minutes.
Well, it was extraordinarily windy. Dust, like crazy dust storm was going on. It's kind of like out of the movies when the people come into out of a huge blizzard or snowstorm, they walk into a building. That's all what it was when we got down to the bottom and we walked into this place to get lunch, this little shop. We open the door flies open because it's like a dust storm. You can't see your hand in front of your face. It's so dusty. So we get in there, we do lunch, and then we head back down to the place we had stayed at the night before, and we had kind of done it in our mind. We all right, we had seen it. We did base camp. We went up to Kalpatar, and I was on a severe downward spiral to where,
your body just collapsed.
I just started to really get worse and worse and worse. And so the next day we wake up. We don't know where Adrian is at this point.
It's like, where's Waldo?
We had no idea. We didn't have service or anything, and so we just started heading down, and we sprinted down because I was really, really struggling, and I knew I needed to get down to lower elevation.
So basically, we got all the way down to Namche Bazaar again.
We made it down there, which it took us, 5 or 6 days to get up. We made it down there in 2.
Right. And you were done. You laid in that bed, and I don't think you moved for, was it 2 or 3 days? 3 nights? 2 nights?
Yeah, it was the sickest I've ever been. I don't even know how to explain it. My body just shut down. And, I laid in this bed in this hostel for 3 days. And
Jeez.
Ashley would bring me garlic. My throat was so swollen I couldn't swallow anything. It hurt so bad. And so Ashley would bring me garlic water and all this tomato soup.
Yeah, I went to an herbal medicine shop to see what they had.
You're just taking anything. None of it works. And
finally, we decided they actually have a hospital there.
Yeah, a clinic.
I wouldn't really call it a hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had this room that said surgery on it.
Right.
And that would be terrifying. I wouldn't trust that at all. But I guess if that's all you have, that's what you have to do.
It's all you have, right.
But this clinic, this is my infamous story because Mason is so independent and strong and normally wouldn't allow me to have to take care of you. That's very out of character. And
don't need no man.
At this point, you are so sick that you have to put your arm around my shoulder and I have to walk you to this clinic to get you some antibiotics because you are so sick.
It was awful. And it wasn't even that far, but I remember it just took a lot of strength to get there. And so we were, struggling. I eventually kind of started to feel a little bit better. But we're at this Namche Bazaar, which is still 10 miles, a 10-mile hike down to Lukla.
And it's the valley again, down and up.
Down and up. And I didn't have the strength to do that 10-mile hike. So we had a couple options, one being a helicopter, the other being horseback riding.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that was an option.
It was cheaper to do the helicopter, and so we ended up booking a helicopter to fly us this 10 miles back down to Lukla, from which we would then catch a plane to go back to Kathmandu to catch our international flight.
Which, thankfully, we did do the helicopter because remember that group that Adrian met when we lost him for the other 2 nights? I ended up meeting up with that group while Mason was sick and in the bed because I was still feeling great. I was like, altitude? What? I didn't even notice. So I get way too cocky at this point, and I go out for dinner with one of the girls. I think her name was Kat, and we had beer. I had a barbecue chicken wrap and a fresh salad. The 2 things I'm not supposed to have, and I end up with my first and only case of food poisoning I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm feeling better. And then Ashley's getting worse.
Yes. So I'm now on the decline. And I'm so thankful that we had booked a helicopter that night before.
Yeah. So we ended up taking the helicopter down to Lukla, from which we then spent the night and then waited the entire next day to catch a flight back to Kathmandu. During this time, Adrian was on a different adventure. Adrian, why don't you fill him in on that?
Oh, boy. How much time I got on this one?
Let's see. You got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
We might have to save that for another episode. How about we do that? We'll just to be continued.
Cliffhanger ending.
A cliffhanger.
See what happens.
Yeah. So Adrian, let's say, was not part of that part that we just talked about.
No, I was on my own journey.
He was on his own journey. So
very fascinating journey.
And more to come on that in part 3.
Part 3 of the saga here.
Yeah.
We're gonna get rained on, so perfect timing.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
See you later.
Bye-bye.